Now let's bring in our guest. For him, the NFL is 365 days a year, 24/7. You can hear him on the Around the NFL podcast. NFL Network Analyst Gregg Rosenthal joins us now. And Greg, pretty quiet day around your office, I assume.
I know. You picked the perfect day to have this scheduled. I was like, my mind is still recovering from Aaron Rodgers signing the contract, which I thought was going to be the big thing of the day. And then in perfect fashion, Russell Wilson, in his trade to the Broncos, made Aaron Rodgers a B story. And I guess I'm a small person that I kind of enjoy that a little too.
I would love to start with Russell because that one blindsided me a little bit. I'm a Packer fan. I've been following the Packer story very closely. But what did you make of the Broncos and Seahawks making this epic trade? And I mean, did you expect it?
They're putting it out there through different insiders that the Rodgers deal had nothing to do with the timing. I mean, I don't buy that. I do buy that they started this process 2 weeks ago because a trade this big doesn't come together that quickly. I look at it from kind of the global NFL level and just think it's fascinating because Russell Wilson wanted out a year ago. He was on the record. His agent was on the record wanting out with 3 years left on his contract, and he got it done a year later. And to me, that changes like how NFL trades can be run. It's a little more NBA-like, and it also says to me that Pete Carroll was ready for this divorce too, because people have asked the question, does Pete Carroll want to be there during a rebuild? It's like, who do you think's making this trade? Pete Carroll runs this organization with more power than any coach in the entire NFL. Their owner, Paul Allen, died a couple of years ago. Jody Allen has taken over, but he's doing what he wants, and I don't think he's trying to rebuild. And maybe they'll step back at the quarterback position, but I think he's going to want to prove people wrong and try to compete this year and thinks that he's going to be there for a while more. And the fact that they essentially chose Pete Carroll over Russell Wilson, I think supports that he's not going anywhere anytime soon.
See, Pete Carroll's 70 years old. It's obvious he wouldn't want to be a part of a rebuild. And then Jody Allen had just said they weren't interested in a trade. That's why I'm still kind of looking for clues.
Yeah, everything that they said about Russell Wilson was just saying things to say it.
Yep.
I think now, just saying what they can. And if you listen carefully, they never totally box themselves into a corner, Pete Carroll.
Yeah.
He basically was saying, look, we're not interested in trading him, but he didn't shut the door if someone was going to come calling. And the price that they got for him, 2 firsts, 2 seconds, a good young tight end in Noah Fant, who I like a lot. Mm-hmm. Shelby Harris, who I think is a good veteran defensive lineman that people don't know a lot about, but there's a reason why the Broncos paid him so much money last year. He's a good player. And Drew Lock is just a guy to compete at quarterback. I don't think he's going to really matter in the long run. They got a lot for him. I don't think it's smart to be choosing your 70-year-old head coach over your franchise quarterback, but this is not Aaron Rodgers. To me, he's not a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. And so they at least got a representative haul for trading a guy that good.
Do you think his health had anything to do with it? Is there anything that they know that we're not privy to? Is there anything that puts him in question as far as how much more he has left in the tank?
No, but I do think his play over the last 2 years had something to do with it. People put last year's struggles totally on that finger injury. And he was very cautious early in the season. And more importantly, in the second half of the 2019 season was the worst stretch of play Russell Wilson's ever had in his career. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't 2 or 3 games. It was 8 or 9 games. He was hurting them in that stretch. And I think he's a guy who's always relied on his athleticism, holding the ball forever and making a play. And they've tried a lot of different offensive coordinators with him, and they never quite found the right one. And that's on Pete Carroll too, but I don't think there was the belief from Pete Carroll and John Schneider that Russell Wilson was in that tier of Aaron Rodgers and now Herbert and Mahomes. I don't think they viewed him that way, or else they wouldn't have traded him.
Just to follow up, because I'm a huge Giants fan, so there was so much hope that he was coming to New York. He, I think, at some point intimated that he wanted to come to New York. So what happened there, and what do the Giants do now? Are we stuck with this Dookie? I was just calling him a dookie because you know what I'm sick of? I'm sick of seeing Daniel Jones. I've had enough bad facial expressions from quarterbacks. He's not the franchise guy. What do we do now? So 2 questions. What happened there, and what do the Giants do now?
I just don't think they were ready to give up this haul at any point. First of all, as you know, they've changed who's running the ship. But I don't think either GM, whether it was Joe Shane coming in or Dave Gettleman on the way out, was ready to make this kind of deal. I think you're going to have the Daniel Jones and Mitchell Trubisky poo-poo platter there, and I think Daniel Jones is the better player of the two. And that I think he might be okay in the right system. I think Brian Daboll's a really good coach, and I think maybe the upside is okay to a little better than okay, and he'll turn your opinion around. But he's not going to be Russell Wilson.
I hope so. I hope so.
So then what about over to Green Bay? As you saw the news break today about Aaron Rodgers, did you basically see that coming? Because when I saw the Packers bring back Tom Clements as the quarterback coach, I was like, oh, it's done. He's staying. Tom Clements isn't coming back to coach Jordan Love.
Absolutely. I think Aaron Rodgers was using every lever that he could pull over the last couple of weeks, and that's why you started hearing more about the Broncos, more about him not really making a decision. That's how you get the $200 million over 4 years. I don't know the details, but at some point it was less than that, and then it started going up, and it started going up. And I said all along, like, money solves everything here. You couldn't have told me a year ago, if they had offered him $200 million over 4 years then, that he wouldn't have just taken it. And everyone said it was this personal thing. And I said, okay, but he's negotiating. So that means there is a number that will get him to sign. And we found out what that number was today, in addition to the relationship repair that they've done over the last year. And I think it makes sense. I do not think it makes sense for either side to have a divorce. Right. So I totally think it was the right move for Rodgers and the Packers.
At the David Bakhtiari wedding that he just officiated, do you think he had a couple cocktails and started telling people just wait, big news this week? What do you think he said at this wedding?
I don't know, man. I mean, Aaron Rodgers feels like he could keep things close to the vest. Like, even his best friends don't know what he's going to do. So I think he is a businessman, and he I think probably knew this was the likely outcome. Not just the last couple of months. I definitely believe he knew this was the likely outcome. But even going back a year, I think he knew it. And yet you didn't hear that much talk coming out of his friends. So I don't know. I think he probably was keeping everyone off guard with some sarcastic jokes. And everyone was like, what did Aaron really mean with that? Because I think everyone in his life thinks that.
Yeah. No one knows what he means.
Yeah, I wonder with that money what kind of improvements he's going to do to his house. I mean, I would just move out of Green Bay and just helicopter in from a warm climate. I mean, God. Or I don't know, maybe buy Wisconsin. I mean, is he the richest person that's ever been in Wisconsin besides your grandfather?
Ooh.
I'm talking to Olivia.
Yeah, he's got to be up there. I guess Giannis will be up there at some point.
Yeah.
They're holding on to their homegrown heroes. Maybe he could work that into the deal, that he flies in kind of like Tony Dungy style at the end of his career as a coach. He would go back to Tampa, but between Sunday and Wednesday, maybe Rodgers could do that and go back to California.
Yeah.
Greg, I'm our resident Wisconsin person, and I keep trying to have Giannis come visit in the summer because then he'll get it. But he seems to hate the upper Midwest. He just did a comedy show in Minneapolis. He thought it was a dump.
Yeah,
no. Minneapolis is a nice town. It's cold. I'm sure it's beautiful in Wisconsin, but I'm someone that grew up in Western Massachusetts, and that was the last winter I wanted. And for the most part, I've stuck with that. Was high school, so I understand.
There you go.
Yeah. It's
well, speaking of that part of the country, you were just in Indianapolis. Tell us about the combine and your biggest takeaways, especially as you kind of look at draft order and a mock draft in your head.
Ooh. I don't know if that much changed. Certainly Jordan Davis, it's hard to imagine him slipping out of the top 15 to 17, which I wouldn't have guessed. I don't think there's a lot of players that hurt themselves at the top level. I think with this Seahawks trade, they now have the Broncos' first round pick. So spinning ahead to where Denver is in the first round, it does make, where Seattle is in the first round, it does make you wonder, if whoever they like the best, whether that's Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett, whoever it's going to be, ends up getting taken pretty high. Because one thing I think has been true about the draft, you could make a lot of money predicting that quarterbacks are going to get higher than they're predicted to go in mid-February. And I think that'll be the same here. These guys are going to go higher than people expect, and especially with Seattle, for instance, now needing a quarterback too. I think that's going to happen.
You mentioned Kenny Pickett's, his hand size measures at 8.5 inches. Good for third smallest by a quarterback in combine history since 2003, I believe. Is this a real thing that scouts were considering, or are we just desperate for NFL news right now?
They do consider it. It definitely is a factor. You still hear about Jared Goff when he struggles in cold weather, that they put it on the hands, and his hands were, half an inch bigger than Pickett's, who are smaller than basically any big quarterback. But he played in Pittsburgh. He played great in Pittsburgh. He played in cold weather games in Pittsburgh. And that's generally the concern when it comes to smaller hands and weather situations, whether it's rain or cold weather. And he excelled this season in Pittsburgh in cold weather games. So I can't imagine it matters too much.
Yeah, Giannis, you know who else had 9-inch hands that you might be surprised?
Who?
Joe Burrow, Ryan Tannehill. Now it is half an inch bigger, but those are still small hands in NFL quarterback history.
It could just not be about cold weather. It could be that maybe the old myth is true that small hands equals small something else, and they don't want guys feeling uncomfortable in the locking room. You don't want an insecure quarterback. You want a nice headspace, feels confident in the showers. That could be it too. I'm just saying, I'm no reporter, but I'm saying there could be a connection where you want just a confident quarterback, knowing that he can shower next to the boys and feel good about himself. I don't know.
Gregg, you don't have to respond to that.
That would be a next level. I mean, they get pretty deep into these players. That would be
they do.
That would be a next level analysis that even some of these scouts I've never heard from. But you never know what's behind closed doors.
Reports from Kenny Pickett out of the combine were not super flattering, whereas Malik Willis seemed to kind of get people's attention a little bit more for off the field. People just light up talking about Malik Willis. When you look at those two, first of all, do you think they're the two best quarterbacks in this year's draft, or did Matt Carroll slip in there as well?
Yeah, I think there's not a huge difference between any of them except for total upside, and that's Willis. And I just think seeing him in person and then also getting to hear from him and see that he's a guy that you can imagine leading a group of NFL players is just going to have at least one team fall in love with him, because he does have the highest ceiling. He does have the biggest arm. He does have the most athleticism. I think Desmond Ridder helped himself a lot. Mm-hmm. He's another guy I think will get drafted higher than people think, because his ceiling looks higher with his athleticism. But Willis, coming off of Josh Allen developing in the way that he did, and certainly Herbert, we're coming off a couple guys where just the rawest tools, the most talented guys have excelled. And in this class, that's Willis. He didn't care who was running when they were doing the go routes. He was just going to throw the ball as far as he could, and even if it wasn't complete, just to wow the scouts. And I think it totally worked.
Yeah. So the Jaguars have the first overall pick again, just like the Browns a couple years ago. Who do you think is first off the board after everything you've gathered, my friend?
It's a great question. They franchise tag Cam Robinson on Tuesday, and so that's their left tackle. And so to me, that was a strong indicator. Are you really going to draft a tackle at 1 and then put him to the right side? I don't know. So that indicates a pass rusher, to me, would be more likely at 1. Aiden Hutchinson didn't do anything at the combine to make you think that he wasn't going to be the first edge rusher up there. But there's such talented guys that every team could view it a little differently. Trayvon Walker had a monster combine, but Hutchinson really feels like the safest pick in terms of his production and his athleticism. And that Cam Robinson move on Tuesday, not going to get a lot of attention with all the quarterback news that happened, but I think that is a strong sign that they're not going to take a tackle number 1.
Yeah, Aiden Hutchinson was a beast. Heisman Trophy finalist last year, 14 sacks last year. Now, I kind of like him. I like whenever a college player sticks around the neighborhood and goes to the nearby NFL team. Detroit has the number 2 pick. Do you kind of like that fit and how he would work into that culture?
Yeah, he fits perfectly there, and they want pass rushers. That's how they're building their team. They were already pretty good up front in Detroit, but I can't imagine there's a wide receiver or certainly a quarterback that they'd be considering that high, or a cornerback for that matter. I don't think Sauce Gardner, who's probably the first cornerback off the board and solidified that at the combine, is going that high. So it's going to be a pass rusher. And like I said, I think certain teams might view different guys differently. There's a thought that maybe some of these Georgia guys have a little higher upside than Hutchinson. I don't know if I totally buy that. His combine times were also fantastic, other than the 40, the short shuttle, the 3-cone, all that fun stuff. So he's got the production, he's got the measurements. He's going to go, I believe, in the top 2.
I'm just going out on a limb here. When I was in Minneapolis, I met a NFL prospect who just came from the combine, Luke Goedeke. Do you know who he is? I'm just going for it. Maybe not. He was from CMU.
Don't, but I'm not like the Daniel Jeremiah of NFL Network here. I do not know.
Central Michigan guy.
Central Michigan guy from Wisconsin who was a big fan of Sam Dekker. I was just going for it. But hopefully, good luck, Luke. Whatever happens, I hope you make it.
That was a great plug, Giannis. I hope he's listening. Okay, Greg, we'd like to play a game with a lot of our guests. I'd love to play one with you if you're up for it.
Sure.
Okay, this one is based on amusement parks. We wanted to take you on a ride called the Quarterback Carousel. Basically, we give you a quarterback on this constantly moving ride, and you tell us what team's seat they are taking on the carousel.
Ooh,
you ready?
Okay, that's good.
Okay, the first one, Jimmy Garoppolo. 49ers have made it clear he's available in a trade. He'll be rehabbing from shoulder surgery. Not too attractive, but what do you think?
I kind of like the Colts for him. I think the Colts have made it clear they want out of the Carson Wentz business. Like, the owner made them show up to a meeting the night that Wentz blew that final game against the Jaguars, and by all accounts read them the riot act that's like, we're not going into another season with Carson Wentz. So I think he will be an ex-Colt. And then when I look at the players available, I think they are one team that would give up a pick for Jimmy G.
Okay, that's a good one. How about Derek Carr? Entering the final year's 5-year extension, had career-high passing yards this season, but more impressively kept rowing the boat in the face of chaos and heartache and adversity. Was so true to Raider Nation, saying he'd rather leave the game than leave the team, I think he said. So where does he end up?
I think he stays in Vegas. I believe Josh McDaniels wanted to work with him, because why wouldn't he? I think he fits in that sort of offense where you change the scheme each and every week. Your matchup type of team. The downside here is, though, like, Derek Carr is now the 4th best quarterback in the AFC West. I mean, he's a good quarterback, and he's probably the worst one in the division. And I would, if I had to pick the worst roster in the division, even though I don't think the Raiders are bad, I mean, they're a playoff team, they would be the worst roster in the division too.
They got to see if Carr and McDaniels really mesh. They've like hardly met at this point.
It's tricky because he wants huge money. And he is a wild card in the Kyler Murray sweepstakes. I don't know if he's coming up on the carousel, but Carr is the only one I can see that has value, that if Kyler Murray is an ex-Cardinal, that actually another team has another quarterback to offer that would make some sense in a possible trade.
Well, let's go right to Kyler Murray. He wants a new contract. His agent put out a novel about his time in Arizona. His agent also represents Cliff Kingsbury, who just got an extension, by the way. And Kyler wants a new contract before the draft. One, does that happen, or is he out?
I think he's out. I think the move today with Wilson, too, really puts Kyler Murray on the front burner. You asked what I heard at the Combine. I should have mentioned, I heard that it's going to get ugly between these two sides. And I think it's already spilled into the public. I think it's pretty clear that the front office, the coaches, and then Kyler on the other side have sort of been lining up in terms of a power struggle. And one of those two sides just got extensions through 2027. And the other is getting a lot of negative reports about him in the media, where you can probably guess where that come from, including maybe from the very top. And so he is the guy I think that is next. I actually do believe he's going to be an ex-Cardinal. And if I had to pick one team that would pay the absolute most for him, I think it would be Washington. But I think Washington, Carolina, Las Vegas, those are all teams that you could look at.
Wow.
How about Jameis Winston and Nola? Where will he be?
I think he
Same
stays.
Place, moving?
Yeah, I think he ends up staying. I think they kept everyone that they possibly could, and I think they liked what they saw out of him, and ultimately it's sort of he's worth more to them than he's worth to anyone else.
Okay, what about Carson Wentz? You mentioned you think he is no longer a Colt, that's been painfully clear, but someone's got to take him.
Man, I already gave Kyler to...
You did. Washington.
I kind of want to flip it, and just for fun, it would be Kyler in Vegas, Carr in Arizona, and then I would give Carson Wentz to Washington, who never seems like they get nice things, and so this would be not a nice thing.
Washington's got some pieces, though. They just need a good quarterback.
They do, but I think like they got shut out in this Russell Wilson thing. I don't doubt at all that they offered just as much or more, and this is where their reputation, their lack of success, their drama that they've had over the last 2 decades, really, I think comes into play, because he had a no trade clause. And so Russell Wilson essentially picked where he wanted to go. And I personally have no doubt that they would have offered just as much to Seattle, but that he wouldn't have wanted to go there.
I thought he was going there. It's where he's from. He posted that picture with Jonathan Allen. I thought he was going to be a Commander for sure. Okay, Giannis, take us home. Last one.
Last one, of course, not least, and maybe most improbable, but Tom Brady. Do we see him in uniform, or is he just going to be working on Brady brand?
I mean, no one's going to go back and tell me that I'm wrong about this, so let's pick the most fun answer, which he's a 49er. I mean, when they signed Brian Greasy to be their quarterbacks coach over the weekend, who's given up a massive salary as the Monday Night Football announcer to become a quarterbacks coach. And I think like, who was with Tom Brady at Michigan? Who's has a great relationship with Tom Brady ever since then? I don't know. I think you can connect some dots here of Tom Brady spending some time in his childhood bunk bed over the last month or so, and certainly the way that he's talking. I just kind of can't imagine the Bucs allowing him to do this or giving him up, but maybe the 49ers would give up a haul to go get him.
Yeah.
Man.
I can't imagine him retiring
bizarre.
the way that he did. Yeah, I just can't imagine he retires with an Instagram post. So I think you're right.
I can't either, and that makes me think, when I'm being truthful, not with the carousel stuff, that the Bucs would hold him hostage and make him play there or nothing else. And if they don't pick up a big name, if they decide to just go like the Blaine Gabbert and Kyle Trask route, who's the 2nd-round pick they took last year, then it's like they can just keep the seat warm and just ready for Tom to slide right in when he wants to come back.
Was there anything more relatable than when Tom Brady said he wanted a lot of family time, and 5 weeks later he said, "No, I'm good. I saw the family. I'm good." It's like when you want to go on vacation, but you're like on the second dinner and you're like, "God, you guys are intolerable."
Yeah, I was wondering when people said like, "Look, Giselle, she holds a lot of sway and she wants him to do this." I was like, "What do you think she's wanted the last 6 off seasons? Like, this is not a new thing." And he's ultimately made the final call the last 6 off seasons and gotten his way. And I think he might once again.
Oh, that was fun. I don't know about you guys. I'm dizzy on that carousel. I need to get off that carousel. Gregg, thanks so much for joining us. You can follow Gregg on Twitter at Gregg Rosenthal. That's Gregg with 2 G's. 2 G's, all the better. Thank you, Gregg.
3 in all, 60% G. Thanks, Olivia. Thanks, Giannis.
Oh.
Thanks.